There we go. Well, great to be with you guys this morning. Glad to have this opportunity to talk. Had some great breakfast and really, like I said, pleased to be with you. I thought it'd be good to begin with a passage that is going to be kind of in the background as I am addressing you this morning. And this is a passage that's found in Genesis chapter 1. Beginning at verse 26, and it reads, and this is from the ESV. I don't like reading from these things, but I don't have my big Bible with me. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living creature that moves on the earth." Let's pray. Father, I pray that the words of my mouth and meditations of my heart will be acceptable to you, for you are our rock and our Redeemer. Well, I just kind of finished up a little trilogy of books on the household, and I think some of you guys are familiar with some of those books. First book's called Man of the House, and that book is actually kind of just a defense of households as kind of the fundamental institution that makes any culture, civilization be what it is. And the response to that book was great. I mean, I wasn't terribly surprised by the response, because I think deep down in our bones we all know every part of the world, every culture, that's how it's worked. There's been households that have been formed when a man and a woman are united in marriage, and then children proceed from that union, and it's fruitful. And so wherever I've gone and talked about the themes in that book, doesn't really matter where a person's from, they get it, because it's kind of on their bones. We all know this is the way it's supposed to work. And the crazy thing is we live in a world where the institutions that surround households don't agree. They're working overtime to undermine the integrity of those households, and there are a range of reasons for that, and I'm not going to go on to all that stuff. But anyway, so that book, and then I wrote another book entitled The Household and the War for the Cosmos, and in that book, I was hoping to try to show how our households are kind of a picture of the end of the world. When our households are working the way they're supposed to be working and reflect the union of Christ and the church, then people can see the gospel right there. You know, when a man and a woman are united in marriage, what belongs to one is what then belongs to the other. So when we think about the church and Christ, the Lord of glory, infinitely wealthy, church, really bad place. Sinful, stained, just in need of help. And then when Christ, gives his life as a sacrifice for sin and is raised, those who believe in him are raised with him and enjoy all of the glory that he deserves. That's the beauty of it. That's why it's salvation by grace through faith. It's not from us. It's not, we add nothing. So we receive everything, and what does he get? Well, he gets our sin, our problems, our mess, our death, all that stuff. But he overcomes all that stuff and does it for us, the church. So while none of us as men are the bride of Christ individually, we're men. The church as a body is. And that's what's reflected in a human marriage. This is why gay marriage is not marriage. It's just nonsense. It's wishful thinking. It's craziness. It doesn't go anywhere. It can't be fruitful and multiply. It's right? It's just basic stuff. I mean, this is stuff that gets you canceled now. I can't tell you how many times people have tried to cancel me. And I've got friends who've been canceled for just saying I've got, good friends who've been canceled for just saying that kind of thing, at big institutions and universities and stuff. So the cancel culture is real. Don't let anybody kind of poo-poo the idea that, no, people are over it. No, I've got friends who've lost lots of money, lost friends that they thought were friends and were revealed to not be friends, that kind of thing. So anyway, in the background in all of this, the question of dominion, what does dominion look like? Based on what we see here in this passage, dominion is something that we have been given by God. We can't abdicate. It's not like we can say, oh, nope, not going to do that anymore. It's done. We have dominion. What do we do with it is the question. And because some people have abused dominion, people have written dominion off as a bad thing. They've equated domination with dominion. In their minds, there's no distinction. So as I've thought about it, I've thought, somebody needs to speak up for dominion. There are a lot of great words that we need to speak up for. Like, I'm a Presbyterian, and Presbyterian just is a reference to presbyters, elders in the church, in other words, governance in a church by elders. But you know what a lot of people think of when they think of Presbyterians today? They think about those wacky mainline guys who are like blessing everything. So do we just say, okay, you get Presbyterian now? That's your word now. Gay used to mean happy. Okay, that's a word we can't use anymore. That's your word now. Seems to me like they're taking dominion, taking over the language. I think we need to take it back. Word Presbyterian, that's our word. We need to take it back. Let me say something really politically incorrect. I think gay should mean happy again, and not perversity. That'll get me canceled. This is being recorded, right? Anyway, so now when we think about dominion, though, because we've all been kind of told that dominion is domination, we kind of slip into the same kind of nonsense in the way we talk and think about it ourselves. It's almost like we're embarrassed to read that verse about dominion, those verses. Or we spend a lot of time apologizing. Doesn't mean what you think, that kind of thing. Or don't even go there. There are large swaths of the Bible that are never read aloud in many churches. In my mind, those are the ones that we need to read more, because those are the places where the culture is making us conform to its image. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. That's in the Bible. We need to be the ones that say, no, you got that wrong. I'm here to give you the good news and speak authoritatively. Apostolic confidence is what we need. When the apostles arrived in a city, they would look at the situation on the ground and try to assess it, try to figure out the best way to talk to people. But they didn't go around with little notepads and survey people. What do you want in a church? Oh, that's what you want. You want it to be more like David Letterman. Okay, we can do that. No, what we do is we come and we say, this is what it is. We have the confidence to say, I am from God, and I'm telling you this is what God says. Apostolic confidence is what we need. Anyway, so those are things that have been on my mind a lot. And so I wrote those two books, and I thought, well, where can I go next to kind of address this third theme? And it occurred to me, this sounds crazy, that Tom Bombadil in The Lord of the Rings is the picture of what dominion is supposed to look like. Tom Bombadil. Now, a lot of you are like, Tom Bomba what? What is this dude talking about? I don't know what this is all about. I'm not a nerd, and I'm not into Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff. If you've seen the films, you probably noticed that Tom was left out. Or maybe you didn't notice because you didn't know he was supposed to be there. Right? So you might say, well, if he was so unimportant that Peter Jackson could leave him out of the films, why do we even need to think about him? maybe Peter Jackson doesn't know how important Tom is. Maybe Peter Jackson's criteria for deciding what should be in a film or not have more to do with how long the film is than what the Lord of the Rings is really all about. Anyway, so I was thinking about writing about Tom, and I've always been intrigued by the character. Now, just to kind of get a sense of who I'm talking to here, how many folks here have actually read Lord of the Rings? Roughly 30%. Okay, so I'll have to give you a little bit of background. How many have seen the films? Okay, about 50%. So anyway, let me give you a little bit of background on the story, so that some of the things I have to say will make sense. So in the story, there is this powerful magic ring, and it's really the sort of like the center of the story. And Lord of the Rings is about temptation. There's this ring that makes the wearer invisible, but not only does it make the wearer invisible, it makes it possible for that person to bend other people to the wearer's will. If I'm wearing the ring, I can make you do stuff that you don't want to do. I've got that kind of power. It was forged by a wicked sorcerer named Sauron, and he intended to use it to dominate the world. And there were other rings of power that different creatures, races in Middle-earth had. There were elves and dwarves and men, and you're probably saying, oh, now we're into that nerd stuff. But anyway, you had these different groups, and they had their own rings. And some of the rings were made by the elves. There were 3 rings made by the elves that were made independently of the ring that Sauron crafted. But Sauron was so crafty that he actually was able to get power over even those rings. And then he forged rings for the dwarves, and he forged rings for the men, in particular men, kings, and sorcerer kings. And in the process, he came to dominate, in particular, the men who wore those rings. They became the Ring Wraiths, his most powerful servants. And so in the story, they're just completely freaking you out. They're called the Black Riders because they just wear black. You never see their faces. They're wraiths. They're not even physically real. They're ghosts. But you can't kill them. They don't die. So no matter what, they just keep coming. And anyway, so that's the scenario. So this idea of a ring of power that could make the wearer invisible is not original to Tolkien. Actually, the first or the most significant ring of power that can make you invisible is found in the Republic, Plato's Republic, the Ring of Gyges. And I'm pretty confident that Tolkien was at least basing his ring in part on that ring. And that ring, and the Ring of Gyges, there's this dialogue, the Republic, in which Socrates is talking with a bunch of different guys, and they're talking about what is justice? What is justice? And they're talking about different theories of justice. And one of the characters, a guy named Glaucon, kind of gives a cynical answer. He says, justice is just essentially this: an agreement between people who want to get away with murder, but don't want to be murdered. That's all it is. It's people who want to get away with murder but don't want to be murdered, and they have this agreement not to harm each other. That's all. There's nothing more to it. And then he tells the story of the Ring of Gyges, which was a story that people in Greece at that time would have been familiar with. It's about this shepherd, and he is out with his sheep, and he comes across the corpse, the dead body of a giant. And the giant has a ring. So he takes the ring and discovers that it makes him invisible. If he wears the ring, he's invisible. He realizes, this is great. I can get away with murder. So that's just exactly what he does. He becomes a member of the king's court, seduces the king's wife, kills the king, becomes king. Basically, the message is, keep your eye on shepherds. Because you never know what they'll do if you don't. And that's the message is that we all have to keep our eyes on each other, because if we don't, then we're going to try to get away with murder. And that's all. And so what you end up with, of course, is a society of mutual suspicion, where just everybody is on the defenses all the time because they really think that everybody else is out to get them, and they're trying to get at everybody before they get them, that kind of thing. But that's a different ring. The ring in this story, as I noted, it can do that, but it can do more. And the difference between the Ring of Gyges and the Ring of Power in Lord of the Rings, there's another difference, and that is the Ring of Gyges just reveals the hidden recesses of the human heart. Because you're invisible, we can see what you're really all about. You see how that makes sense? But with the Ring of Power, not only do we see what's on your mind, you get worse. The longer you wear the ring and try to bend other people to your will, the worse you get, the more you resemble the maker of the ring, Sauron, the evil lord of the Lord of the Rings. It's a weird title in a way. The Lord of the Rings is Sauron. So this is a book that's named for the wicked character that gets killed at the very end of the story. Anyway, so this is the background. So you got these hobbits, right? This is another marvelous thing about the story, is that the most inconsequential creatures in Middle-earth, these little people who people don't even know who they are. As they're going through the story, it's like, what are you? Because they're just, so inconsequential, no one has ever had to think about them. They don't have any big histories written about them. They're just small people. And Tolkien was pretty clear that in certain places when you talk about hobbits, he was talking about just regular people. Regular people. People that you don't have histories written about, people who just work every day for a living, people who just mind their own affairs, regular folks. There was this marvelous event in the Netherlands celebrating Lord of the Rings, and he was invited over to speak. And he was kind of a recluse. Tolkien didn't like to get out very much, didn't like to go places to speak and stuff like that. So this was kind of a big event. He agreed to do this, and he addressed the audience this way: "My fellow hobbits," meaning you're regular people, I'm a regular person. This is not the heroes in this story are not Ulysses or Aeneas or anyone great, some demigod. This is just little people, and they're the ones who find themselves with this ring of power. A particular character named Bilbo, he gives the ring to his nephew Frodo, and Frodo and Bilbo don't know what this ring is all about, but they find out, and they're just kind of, what do we do about this? And of course, you've got a good wizard. You can't have a fantasy story without wizards and good wizards and bad wizards and stuff like that. And the good wizard's name's Gandalf. He tells the hobbits that there's no way we can redeem this. This is Malum and Se. It's just evil all the way down. We can't put it to into the service of a good cause. You might start that way, but you won't end that way. Does this remind you of anybody or any people you've heard about? People often start with good motives, trying to do good things, and are corrupted, in the process. So this is a real phenomenon that we deal with in our world. So anyway, they have to get rid of the ring. So the goal of the story is destroy the ring. That's the goal. And so the hobbits set out on a quest not to get something, but to get rid of something. Get rid of the ring. Now, as they're leaving this place called the Shire, which is this little kind of country village area, sort of setting, the Black Riders are on them. They're just arrived just in time to, to pursue the hobbits as they're fleeing. And of course, they are way overmatched. I mean, these are each of the Black Riders is a sorcerer himself, and they're just four little people trying to get away. And they say, we can't stay on the road, because if we stay on the road, they'll get us. So they go into their place called the Old Forest. And the Old Forest is almost as bad as Black Riders, because it's a very ancient place, and there are some scary things in that forest. And one of the really scary things is a tree named Old Man Willow. and it's a malevolent willow tree that hates people, hates anything that moves on two legs, just wants to get them. And so Old Man Willow has got this dominion in the forest. He dominates the other trees. He even dominates the other creatures of the forest. And he's able to over, through his songs, bring the hobbits to the place where he's planted, right by this river called the Withywindle. And in short order, he's almost eaten 2 hobbits. They're actually inside the tree. And the other hobbits are like, what do we do to save our friends? And they're beside themselves. They don't know what to do. And so they just are running around, help, help, help. And that's when a particular character appears, a guy named Tom Bombadil. So what I want to do is I want to read to you a little bit about Tom's appearance in the story and reflect with you a bit on, just what's going on with this. And so this is the book. This is the latest book I wrote. It's apparently selling well because it keeps selling out on Amazon. Depending on when you go to Amazon, it may be completely sold out and they have to restock it. So it's doing really well. I don't know the numbers, but I'm told that they've already ordered a second printing. So that's good. But anyway, so here's the situation. So you've got all the, they're in this tree, this malevolent willow tree, and they're crying for help. This is Frodo and Sam. They're crying for help. And then the story says this. Then suddenly, hopping and dancing along the path, there appeared above the reeds an old battered hat with a tall crown and a long blue feather stuck in the band. With another hop and a bound, there came into view a man, or so it seemed. He had a blue coat and a long brown beard. His eyes were blue and bright, and his face was as red as a ripe apple, but creased into 100 wrinkles of laughter. In his hands he carried on a large leaf, as on a tray, a small pile of white water lilies. Now we learn that what he's doing is he's bringing home some flowers to his wife. He's dancing and singing as he goes along. We learn later that he actually knew the hobbits were in the forest, and he knew just when to show up. And he shows up in the nick of time because he knew they would be in trouble. But one of the things he does is he sings a lot, and he likes to sing about himself. And he sings these songs that seem like nonsense. So here's some nonsense for you. Hey, dole, merry dole, ring-a-dong-dillo. I say that every day. I get up. Ring-a-dong, hop along, fa-la-la-willow. So he's making fun of Old Man Willow. Tom, bomb, jolly Tom, Tom Bombadillo. That's him. And then when Frodo and Sam run up to him and say, help us, he says, whoa, whoa, steady there, cried the old man. Now, my little fellows, what you be going to, puffing like a bellows? This is one of the things, he rhymes a lot, just kind of even when he talks. What's the matter then? Do you know who I am? I'm Tom Bombadil. So the very first character in the story to raise the question, who is this guy, is the guy. Do you know who I am? No. So they tell him about their problem, and this is what he says. What? Shouted Tom Bombadil, leaping in the air. You can just see him jumping up, And Old Man Willow, not worse than that, eh? That can soon be mended. I know the tune for him, old gray willow man. I'll freeze his marrow cold if he don't behave himself. I'll sing his roots off. I'll sing up a wind and blow leaf and branch away, Old Man Willow. And the next thing you know, that's what he does. He sings the hobbits free. Now, he uses a branch for emphasis. Just takes a branch, starts beating the thing. Let him out! Let him out! Next thing you know, poop, the tree is opened up, and they pop out. And they're like, wah! And then Old Man Willow just shakes and goes to sleep. And then Tom says, okay, you're coming to my house. No, and he says, just follow the path. And then he just kind of takes off. And they're like, what's going on? And so they follow him, and they finally get to the house, and the sun's going down, and there's this beautiful scene, this house on the edge of the forest. And it's, got lights in the windows, and the door opens up, and they hear this song. Beautiful music from a woman, singing them in. So they're sung into the house by Goldberry, his wife. She's almost as mysterious as Tom. We're not really sure what she is or what he is, but we're pretty sure they're not just regular people. And then they spend 2 evenings and a day at Tom's house. They spend a whole day there because it rains the following day after this event. And it's during that day that some remarkable things happen in the house. And one of those remarkable things is Tom demonstrates that he's perhaps the most powerful creature in Middle-earth. What occurs is at the dinner table at night, after they've had a whole day where Thomas told them stories about the forest and Middle-earth, and he's revealed that he is the oldest creature in the world. He says, I can remember the first raindrop. I can remember the first acorn. And later on, we're told in the story that he is the oldest and he's fatherless. Yep, there's been some speculation that he's kind of a Melchizedek figure. There's also some speculation that he may be a kind of Adamic figure like Adam, the first creature. But at the table, he says to Frodo, "Show me the precious ring." And Frodo says, "Okay." Just takes it out and hands it to him. He doesn't ask, he commands. It's the imperative, show me the ring. And he uses precious. Now, if you know the story, you know that there's another creature in the story that calls the ring precious. It's a creature called Gollum, who had been enslaved by the ring and its possessor for thousands of years, and now is this just completely corrupted, fallen, wicked thing. So when he says, show me the precious ring, we're not told that the hobbits told him anything about Gollum, but I can't help but think that Tom knew about Gollum. So he showed me the precious ring. So they give him the ring. Frodo gives him the ring without even a qualm, and then Tom holds it up to his eye. Woo! Like this. Now, there's another character in this story I've already mentioned, Sauron. We're told that the eye of Sauron is always surveying the world in search of the ring. And here's Tom doing that. Woohoo! What do you think he's making fun of? Sauron. And then he puts it on, and nothing happens. He just looks at it. Ooh, isn't that pretty? And then the hobbits realize he hasn't disappeared. Then he takes the ring and flips it in the air and makes it disappear. Everybody's shocked. So the ring doesn't make him disappear. He makes the ring disappear. And then he pulls the ring out and hands it back to Frodo with a smile and says, "Here you go, boy." Like, what's the big deal? Now, that might not seem as significant as maybe you think I'm making it if you don't know the rest of the story. All the other powerful, good characters in the story are scared to death of that ring. Frodo offers the ring to Gandalf. "No, don't give it to me." Frodo offers the ring to Galadriel, this beautiful elven queen. "No, don't give it to me." And in each case, Frodo says, "But you would do something good with it." And then they each say, "It's the way it would start. That's the way it would start. But before long, I would be just like Sauron." That's the thing. But Tom is like, here you go. Take the ring back. I don't need it. Now, later on in the story, they're trying to figure out, how are we going to get to Mordor and, Mount Doom, and how are we going to destroy this ring? And somebody says, "Well, why don't we give it to Tom?" Seems like a reasonable thing to suggest, right? And Gandalf says, "No, that's not a good idea." And they say, "Why?" "Because he'd just forget about it. It's like so unimportant to him that he wouldn't really take it too seriously. It's like, what's the big deal? Here's a ring, Why would anyone want to use this?" So with those things in mind, here's a conversation that Frodo has with Goldberry. So Frodo is, who is this guy? Even though Thomas said, "I'm Tom Bombadil." Frodo speaks to Goldberry and asks the question. And she has a very, I think, significant but kind of enigmatic response. So let me just read from the book here. Significantly, the second person to wonder aloud about Tom is Frodo, the ring bearer and primary protagonist of the story. And the person to whom he addresses his question is the person who knows Tom best, his wife Goldberry. And here's her response. He is. Period. He is. Now, anyone familiar with the Bible, and especially the book of Genesis, can't help hearing in Goldberry's answer an echo of the words that came from the burning bush. When Moses asked a similar question, the voice from the bush replied, I am that I am. Now, this has led some folks to suggest that Bombadil is the creator of Middle-earth, the Iluvatar. But Tolkien says no, because people kind of made that guess, and he said, no, that's not who he is. But the conversation continues, and I think it's worth kind of reflecting on how that conversation kind of carries itself out. So after Frodo asks the question, who is Tom Bombadil, and she says he is, this is what happens next. Frodo's incomprehension is plain to see, so Goldberry repeats herself, but she adds that Tom is master of wood, water, and hill. And so Frodo naturally asks, then all this strange land belongs to him? Now it is Goldberry's turn to be puzzled. Frodo's inference that mastery means ownership doesn't follow for her. And so she says, the trees and the grasses and all things growing or living in the land each belong to themselves. Tom Bombadil is the master. No one has ever caught old Tom. He has no fear. Tom Bombadil is master. A door opened, and in came Tom Bombadil. He had now no hat, and his thick brown hair was crowned with autumn leaves. He laughed, and going to Goldberry, took her hand. So that's what the cover is. So I drew this is I have a background in art, and so I drew my the image that came to my mind of Tom. But you can see he's got the leaves. See here. Excellent mustache. He had to have excellent mustache. But anyway, so I had a little fun with that, and I didn't actually think it would be the cover of the book. I was just kind of doing it for my own entertainment, and I passed it along to the publisher, and they said, well, let's use that. And then this whole weird kind of, they call this a belly band. They wanted to make it sort of like this is kind of a revelation, like, woo. So that's the idea. Anyway, thinking about this matter then, so Tom is the master, but he's not the owner. The master, but not the owner. He doesn't own anything. He doesn't own anybody, but he's the master. And that's what I reflect on in this book. What does it mean to have dominion without being a dominator? That's the trick. If we can figure that out, we can be a blessing to the world, just like Tom is a blessing to the hobbits in the story. Some people think, if we're going to be, like Christ, we can't have any power. The Lord had power. Power to heal, power to rebuke, set things right. But he wasn't a dominator in the way that Caesar dominated. But he was the Lord, right? So that's the paradox of dominion. And it's a paradox that's easy to lose sight of. It's very easy for us to be corrupted and to behave in a fallen way with regard to the power that we've been entrusted with. But I think the task that we have as believers in Christ is we have to exercise dominion in the spirit of the one who made all things. Because we don't have ownership. We're stewards. This is another, and I'll finish with this thought, then we can ask some questions if you like. But one of the things that you see in Lord of the Rings is that the last book is called The Return of the King. And what you have in that book, that story, is there's a kingdom, Gondor, where the line of the kings has come to an end, but they are living in hope for the return of the king. But there's a steward, the steward of Gondor. This is Denethor in the story. And Denethor, when we see Denethor for the first time, he's a very, sophisticated, powerful, wise man, but he's living in despair. He thinks that there's no hope anymore. He's afraid that they're finally going to lose the long war with Sauron. And I won't give away why he thinks that. It's not just weakness of will. It's because he's kind of seen what he's up against. And so when Pippin, one of the hobbits, and Gandalf arrive in the court of the king, they see this throne high, on a dais, but at the foot, on the floor, a simple chair. And it's the chair of the steward who's waiting the return of the king. That's us. We're the stewards who are awaiting the return of the king. It's not our property that we've been entrusted with. We exercise dominion, but we are made in the image of God, which means that we represent, right, the king's interests. So if one of you were like an agent who was working to represent me, for example, in, say, a real estate deal or in some kind of contractual negotiation, and you just decide to kind of go amok and do your own thing, you would not be representing me anymore. You'd be representing yourself. But my interest would be on the line, right? An image, as we understand it properly, is the representative of the one who's sent the one who bears the image. So we are in this world as image bearers of the Creator. Sometimes when I'm interacting with atheists and they ask, well, give me proof of God's existence. And my response is, you're supposed to be the proof. You're made in the image of God. When people look at you, they should see the Lord. Maybe the reason you're an atheist is you don't like your job. You just don't want it. Anyway, some of those thoughts, we can wrap it up. But anyway, I'm not here as a book salesman or something like that, but I got books. So if you want a copy of this book, you can get it for less money than you pay for it anywhere else. I'll just charge you $10 for it. And anyway, happy to answer any questions you guys have. There you go.
There it goes. Anybody? Any takers?
How did you come to the Lord of the Rings? Was it through that other fellow that wrote the book that you mentioned?
Yeah.
Or was it Tolkien first?
This is kind of an interesting story. I don't know if I could tell my own story. My father deserted our family when I was 11 years old. And I was ward of the state, spent time in foster care, lived in projects and stuff like that. So I was a very bleak part of my life. But before that, not long before that, and this was very out of character, my father was reading Lord of the Rings. And he was an academic. We were living in St. Louis at the time, not too far from the Washington University in St. Louis where he worked. But he just started reading aloud a portion of the Fellowship of the Ring, and it's that part in the story where they're in the mines of Moria, if you know the story, and you've got two of the hobbits, Merry and Pippin, and they're by this well, and they're trying to figure out how deep is this well, and they drop a rock, and they're just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Man, that's a deep well. And I'm like sitting there with them in the dark. Wow, that's really. But I was like 10 years old, and finally the rock hits something, and when they hear the sound, that sound is not only heard by them, it's also heard by some really wicked creatures that they don't want to mess with. And anyway, that leads to a big battle scene and everything. But it awakened something in me. When, because I just had this image in my mind planted, and years later, I'm like, man, that was really a great story. I think it was called Lord of the Rings. And so I kind of looked it up, got The Hobbit out of the library at school, read that, and then kind of got into the trilogy after that. And then when the Silmarillion came out in 1977, I was like 16 years old or 15 years old when it came out, and I bought it. It was a very different experience reading that. But anyway, so it's that is how I was introduced to the story, and it's in my mind has always been like the definition of a good story, which means that there are not many good stories for me because very few stories get anywhere near as good as that story.
Yeah, it's interesting to me to try to decipher between earthly power and spiritual power,
Yeah.
and how to ferret through those distinctions. It's the story kind of deals with a lot of that stuff, but how do we as Christians,
Right.
find our way through that quagmire?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's something that Tolkien wrestled with. One of the things you see in Lord of the Rings is that there are just, good leaders who are exercising just, authority, in their various spheres. So like, the character Aragorn, who is going to be crowned king, he's a very powerful person, but he never forces himself on anybody. If you remember the story, when he first meets the hobbits, he asks their permission to go with them and protect them. He doesn't take over the situation and just make them do what he wants. He waits for them to say, yes, we want you to come with us.
So there is a tension between spiritual strength, but there's benefit in the recognition biblically of spiritual weakness and strength in weakness, and how we.
Yeah. I think one of the things I want to think a little bit more in my own reflections about what Paul is saying there. So when I am weak, I am strong, as he's saying. What I think he's getting at is the appearance of strength isn't as strong as we think. So like in the story with Aragorn, it's not as though he's acting weak when he asks the hobbits for permission to take him along. He's respecting another creature who has a will and mind of his own. He's saying, I'm not going to force this on you. Even though the stakes are incredibly high. The Black Riders are there. They could take the ring from these little hobbits. If they catch him, it's all over. And, he has the ability to lead them to safety. He actually has the ability to fight the Black Riders. He has done it before. But he's not going to force it. That's the trick, Like even as fathers and husbands, yeah, we can get our way pretty much any time we want. But at what price? Wounding and destroying the people around us? We don't want to do that. Yeah, I guess meekness in principle, we're meek regarding the principle of the thing, but I think it's more along the lines of wisdom. We're exercising wisdom, and we're also regarding people who are created by someone else and belong to somebody else as having, we don't have a right to control them. Now, if you're like a manager in a corporation or something like that, you got to control people in a certain sense. We need to work together and things like that, but we don't own anybody, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I saw a video with Dr. Jordan Peterson being interviewed by John Stossel. And in that interview, Dr. Peterson quotes Matthew 5:5. And he says a better way of translating the idea of meek is those who have swords and know how to use them, but keep them sheathed. will inherit the world.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, let me tell a little story about my grandmother. My grandmother was Harry Truman on high heels. She had a mouth like a sailor, and she was also kind of a knockout when she was, you know, younger woman. She was Miss Kansas City. And so she kind of looked like Marilyn Monroe. I could show you pictures of her. Anyway, I remember I was with her one time in San Francisco, and my grandfather, you know, I have this weird family background. I've got, on the one hand, this weird experience with being kind of a ward of the state, and on the other hand, I've got this sort of blue blood background. So I was in this sort of palatial house overlooking San Francisco, and it was just me and Grandma, and we were at the table. And I thought I was a new Christian. I thought I got to witness Grandma. Mistake. Yeah, I said, Grandma, I want to talk to you about the Lord. And she just looked at me with those steely eyes and she said, young man. And I knew it was all over. Young man, Christians are meek, and meek rhymes with weak for a reason. I was like, whoa. No, I think Grandma was wrong. I think that's more the case. And Grandma was a person who kind of took over people's lives. She was one of these people that sucked all the air out of the room. You know, she was just that way. And I respect her, you know, and I owe things to her. But you didn't mess with her, you know. Now, I don't think that we as Christians should let people mess with us either. I think that that if we're going to be in a position to defend the boundaries for other people, we need to make sure we defend our own boundaries. So you're not going to mess with me either. But that's not the same thing as being dominant or dominator or like a manipulator or something like that. That's just simply saying, you don't mess with me.
You're talking to fellow hobbits.
Yes.
And a lot of fellow hobbit gatherings within churches today, if there's a men's retreat or a men's conference in the evangelical sort of world, you know, it amounts to, you know, put the toilet seat down and take your wife on dates more, right? Okay, so you're talking to fellow hobbits here. We can go a little bit beyond that, I think, and you have in your books. But in just a couple of minutes, you're talking to a bunch of husbands and fathers here and grandfathers. What is it we need to hear in the age in which we live, the culture in which we are? Give us some direction in 3, 4, 5 minutes. What would you tell us? What do we need to do?
Yeah. Well, I think as husbands and fathers, we need to recognize our calling and our offices. And there's no abdication. I think there are some very clever ways that we try to abdicate in a Christian way. And I think some of the stuff that you're getting at is that. So, you know, I've said in different places, I was actually in a situation not too long ago where I was challenged on something I said. And I said, what I had said, I had written, in my house, my authority is unquestioned. Now, what did they interpret that to mean? They interpreted it to mean I was Saran. you know, kind of exercising my will to power and making people behave like my puppets and stuff like that. I was thinking Bombadil. So, like with my kids, my wife, you know, all my kids are grown, so, you know, you can go and talk to them if you want about how I did things. But there was an approach that I took in which I never called my own authority into question. But I exercised my authority in order to help my children and my wife flourish, be fruitful in different things they did. You know, I'd take my kids out to breakfast or lunch once a month, one-on-ones. We'd talk about what they liked to do, where the gifts were, that kind of thing. I would try to support them in it. So, for example, here's something that probably my detractors would never guess I did. So my daughter is brilliant. She scored in the top 1% on both the language and the math on the SAT. So she's pretty smart. And she didn't want to go to college. I said, sweetie, you're going to college. Dad says you're going to college. And the reason I did that is because, well, I think that she needed to develop her gifts, but I also knew that she wasn't likely to find her future husband in Sunday school. So I said, you need to go and, go into an environment where there are going to be young men that you can respect. You need to find a man you can respect. And so I said, then she said, what do you think I should study? I said, physics. You'll be the only girl in the whole program, and you'll be like the princess. All the professors will be, look at her, she's in our program, and she could do it. She was good at physics and got A's in the subject and that kind of thing. And I said, you'll be surrounded by a lot of nerds who are very socially awkward, and they're going to make a lot of money. And then she said, no, I'm not going to do that. I said, all right. I said, what do you want to do? Study Jane Austen. I said, of course. You and about 5 million other smart girls. That's all you ever want to talk about is Jane Austen. So she went to school, and she studied history, and she's got a beau now, and he asked for permission to marry her, and I gave my thumbs up. Now, I had another guy who was interested, and I said, nope, not happening. Kind of a typical year for my daughter. I said, nope. So what was I? Was I trying to be a control freak? I was looking out for her interest. I looked at this guy and said, no, I know what this guy's about, and he's up to no good. No, that kind of thing. So that's where you exercise your authority in the interest of your children, that kind of thing. And sometimes you have to make those tough calls. So like she had several suitors, but this was, this latest one I could tell she really liked him and everything. I was like, oh, I hope he's okay. I hope he's okay. Because I didn't want to have to do that again. And he's good. He's good. Yeah.
I believe you said, Christians believe that we should not have power. Is that, all right.
Some do.
Some, sure.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think, if you could explain, what do you think they mean when they say that, and what are the consequences if Christians adopted that way of thinking?
Yeah, I think that they're afraid that all power is the ring. So that they're afraid that if we ever get any power, we'll be corrupted. And I think that they have some basis in, sort of experience for that, because we've seen that happen with people. But I think we need to rise to the level that we need to rise to in order to exercise authority and power in a way that kind of reflects what I'm getting at. Which means we have to be humble. What I mean by that is not to have that humble attitude, oh, poor me, I'm just a doormat crap. What I'm talking about is that we are in submission to the Lord. So when you're in submission to the Lord, you're humble, but you may come off sometimes as pretty arrogant. What I mean by that is you're speaking to people as the Lord's spokesman, saying, this is what has to happen here. So you can actually step into a situation and speak authoritatively and be humble at the same time. So I think, like one of the characters in Lord of the Rings is a dwarf named Gimli. Now, the dwarves in the story are really good with, basically craftsmanship. They're miners, and they make marvelous things, and they have a longing for gold. They love gold. They love precious metals. And the weakness of the dwarves is that the precious metals can kind of completely corrupt them. Yeah, and that's one of the things that occurred with the rings that were given to the dwarves, is it corrupted them and made them greedy, and and they would do things that they shouldn't do. One of the things was in this, the mines of Moria. They went too deep because they were so obsessed with a certain kind of precious metal that they awoke the sleeper below, which was the Balrog, and he comes out. And that's intended to say something to us about, even something as praiseworthy as gold can corrupt us. And so there's this point, though, where Gimli is in the presence of this elf queen, and she asks him, what do you want? And he just says, I want a lock of your hair. That's it. And this is a tremendously bold request. Everybody's like, and she says, what are you going to do with it? He said, I'm going to set it in this crystal, and it'll be an heirloom in my house. And then she gives him some of her hair, and then she says to him, Gimli, this is what I foretell. Your hands will flow with gold, but gold will have no mastery over you. That's the trick. That's the trick. We can acquire power, we can acquire wealth, but it must not master us. We must remain the master so that we can employ it in good, toward good ends. So which means that we have to hold it loosely. The word generous comes from a French word that means open-handed. So whenever we hold on to anything, we have to have it in kind of this open-handed way. It can be taken from us at any time. That includes our family members or people. We can't control them. So, there are some people in the Christian world who really have interpreted dominion to mean domination, and those are scary people. They're controllers, they're control freaks. We got to watch out for that. They might have started off, with good intentions, but they do a lot of damage.
So to kind of piggy on that a little bit, so we have Tom. I am a bit of a nerd. So with Tom having dominion and his realm did
Right.
exist, so how do we account for the concept of the wicked men that then become the Barrow Whites or
Yeah.
the wicked? I haven't quite finished your book yet, but I'm working
Sure.
on it. and the wicked trees that
Yeah,
are
yeah.
that are rebelling against those who truly have also a shared dominion.
Yeah, I kind of conceive, by the way, Tolkien was a Christian, and he didn't, intend for the Lord of the Rings to be an allegory or anything, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't writing meaningful things and thinking deeply about things. When you look at Tom, he's between this fallen forest and a graveyard, kind of like us. That's where we live. So Tom, in my mind, is an unfallen man in a fallen world. So that's the thing to think about. How do we exercise dominion in a fallen world? And it's not easy. I think that there are different characters in The Lord of the Rings that kind of exemplify very noble ways to conduct yourself in a fallen world. Gandalf is one, Galadriel is another, Aragorn's another, So you have all these different characters they're not Tom, they're willing to do things that Tom is not doing, but there's something about Tom that sort of takes it to the next level, I think that's something to keep in mind as we think about our own lives, and how do I exercise dominion in a way that's truly representative of the true Lord, and recognize the fact that I'm surrounded by other creations that belong to someone else. They're not mine. But it's still, at the same time, I can't abdicate. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a pastor. How do I conduct myself in a way that I don't become, through the process of exercising my authority, Saran, wicked sorcerer.
Chris, I think in your book you kind of laid it out as the key elements of dominion as rule and cultivation.
Mhm.
What would be the opposite of ruling and cultivating?
Well, I think rule. One of the things about we hear the word rule or rules and we think, that's bad, right? Yeah, I mean it can be, those can become bad when we just keep making more and more rules, and then we end up micromanaging people's lives. That's kind of. When you ever thought about the fact there was once only one rule? And ever since, it's just been there's no stopping the multiplication of rules. They just kind of proliferating everywhere. So what you want is you want to have a few very clear, understood rules that people are educated to interpret and apply in the various situations they find themselves in, and exercise independent judgment. And a ruler should be a person who only has to step in when it's absolutely necessary, like when a tree is eating some hobbits. It's time to step in. Okay, we can't let that go. Boom, So like in one of my books, I talk about a guy named Mr. Shoe. I don't know if does that ring a bell? It's in Man of the House. So I'm talking about gravitas at that point in the book. And gravitas, the word gravitas means you've got so much weight you can't be ignored. And you're just like the planet Jupiter, man, just everything's affected in your sphere. And Mr. Shoe was like that. He was, get this, the vice principal of discipline in my high school. And no one took Mr. Shoe lightly. He was just like the personification of gravitas. He'd just walk into a room and everybody would go, whoa. He would never raise his voice. He just didn't mess with him. Even teachers were afraid of him. Everybody was afraid of him. He never beat anybody, or you just couldn't mess with him. So I remember one time I was on a bus, and I was like maybe a sophomore or freshman, and all the tougher kids were in the back of the bus, enjoying themselves at the expense of weaker people. You know how this works. And so Mr. Shoes kind of just steps out, and we're in a long line of buses, maybe 30 buses all in a row, loading kids up. And he just looks up, and everybody, the kids in the back say, "Cool it, it's Mr. Shoe!" And he just looks up there, and he just starts walking real slow to the bus. And he gets on the bus, and it's almost like the whole bus, just like when he stepped on it. And he just got to the top of the stairs, didn't say a word. Everybody's just quiet. And he just looked in the back. And they got up and came. And all the weak kids were like, "Yay! We get to go home without being tormented today." And that was it. So, he just kind of stepped in at that moment when you needed somebody to step in. And I think that's what, most of the time, we're just kind of sitting back watching the whole thing and kind of with a smile on our faces saying, "Isn't this great? Lots of little people running around. This is good. Wife making me dinner is great. Enjoying myself. This is great. Whoa, what's going on over there?" That kind of thing. You just kind of step in when you have to. Because you're the one that can do it. You've been given the weight. Even the physical size. Generally, you're the biggest dude in the house. You can do it. You just have to believe in it and stay under control. One of the ways that you lose weight is by losing control. Now, people may be afraid of you, but if they don't think you're under control, they won't want to be under your control. You see what I'm getting at? You need to make sure that you have self-control so that when you speak, everybody says, it's in the interest of everybody that he's doing this. It's not some control game. It's not some ego trip that he's on. He just knows that if this keeps going on, everybody's going to get hurt. And he has to step in and do something about it. So, to me, that's cultivation. That's rule. It's not management. It's not like manipulating people to do everything you want.
So bureaucracies.
Yeah, bureaucracy's evil. That's just evil. I actually talk about that in the book. I'm being a little facetious, but not.
What are some basic characteristics as advice as we're men, fathers, husbands, of taking dominion? Like just some basic characteristics or principles to self-control principle.
Yeah, I think one of the things is just being there, kind of just being on the scene. So you ever watch a Pride of Lions? Okay, so you got the alpha lion, the big dude with the big mane. Everyone knows he's in charge. But most of the time, he's just kind of sitting under the tree trying to stay cool. It's hot out here. And then even the little lion cubs will come up and mess with him a little bit. They'll run around, pull on his, and he's just sort of like, nah, too much work. And then the hyenas show up. Next thing you know, he's up. Everybody's like, whoa. Even the hyenas are like, whoa. Have you ever seen these scenes where the hyenas and the lions are fighting? So oftentimes you'll have the lionesses who are not weak, but they're getting beat up on by like a big bunch of hyenas, and just one lion male shows up and boom, he kills like 2 hyenas just like that, and everybody's just like running for their lives. That's kind of what I'm getting. You're there. You're just there. enjoying the scene, drinking beer, lemonade, or whatever you're going to do, watching what's going on, talking to kids or your wife as they want to talk, and you just kind of step in when you have to. But most of the time, they're just enjoying themselves, doing their own stuff, and you're just trying to help them do that stuff, make sure they can do this. So like a household is a shelter, and when men are doing their job right, they're building a shelter in which the people who dwell in it can grow and thrive and become what God's made them to be. And, like when you think about, your wife, may she be like a fruitful vine, as a husband, you want your wife to be fruitful. Now, obviously, that there's, the reality of children, that's good, but you want her to be fruitful in many ways. You want to make the conditions such that she can enjoy, her work as a wife and mother, and if she's involved in other things, those things too.
Good morning, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to say you could be anywhere right now, and you've chosen to be here. And we talked about humility and all that, and so I just want to express my appreciation, gratitude for you being here and sharing some of this information with us. And it's been really eye-opening as far as the perspective of what a Christian should be doing and how we should be responding within our own families. I think it's quite fascinating to see that reversal taking place within the church. Not domination, but dominion. And I think that concept is really good to cling to. I guess my question is, for many of us, we're not full-time ministers. We're not, we're not just inundated in the church, but we're dealing with a secular society who does not have that same sort of perspective. So what advice would you give to us as we're interfacing with the secular world?
Yeah, that's a good thing to think about. I think about it a lot, because I live in the secular world too. I think first thing to keep in mind is we are an existential threat to the current order, and we just need to recognize that. Our very existence is a threat as men and fathers and husbands. They want to neuter us. They want to humiliate us. They want to make us impotent. So, because they can't do what they want to do if we're doing what we're supposed to do. So, with that in mind, then we never give them any basis. We don't give them anything to work with. So anytime some dude is like a jerk and is like doing the domination thing, he's giving them material, Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to give the people who are out to get you something to work with? So don't. Be circumspect. Now, it doesn't mean you never make a mistake. Doesn't mean you won't lose your head sometimes, But when those times happen, or those occurrences, say you're sorry to people you need to say sorry to. I've said sorry to my kids. That's not like, in fact, if everybody in the room knows you're wrong, but you, it's not helping you. It's not helping your authority at all. If you're the one who says, you know what, I was wrong on that one, guys, and please forgive me, let's move on. Then everybody's like, hey, Dad's cool. We now know that there's a higher authority than Dad. That's huge. So then they can say, it's not just, I just do what my dad says. My dad is trying to do what's right, and he knows more than me. Maybe there'll be a day when I know more than him, and things can be a little different, of course, in a situation like that. When we get older and we can't take care of ourselves, we want to be able to, there's a beautiful, and here's another way you can think about it, beautiful image from the Roman Empire, Aeneas. If you're familiar with the story of the Aeneid, the Trojans, who were defeated by the Greeks in, the Iliad. By the way, everybody thought that was just fiction, but we actually found the city in the ruins. It really was a place, and it really was destroyed by the Greeks. But there was a group of the Trojans who escaped, and they became, and this is what all the Romans believed. The Romans believed that they were the descendants of the Trojans. So they escaped, and they were led by a guy named Aeneas. And but when Aeneas was, there in the city, according to the Aeneid, the story, his mother, who was Venus. Can you imagine if your mother was Venus? It shows up. And she says, "Take the family and run. The city is lost. Jupiter, my father, has decided it's going to go down." So Aeneas is like, "Okay, I got to get out." So he goes home. His father can't walk. His father's an old man, crippled. And he picks up his father, puts him on his back, takes his son, Ilius, by the hand, and leads him out of the city. So he's got one hand, he's got his sword, he's got his father on his back, and so there's 3 generations. There's the past and the future. The past and the future. And he's leading them out. Anyway, so that image was like the image of a devoted family man in the empire. It was on all the coins. You'd see Aeneas with his father and Chryses on his back. And that's a powerful image. Let me give you a little insight into something that maybe you may not know. Are we filming still?
I think so.
I'll tell you later. Anyway, because this is the sort of thing that probably I don't have a right to put on the internet, but it's something I think I can share just as information for you guys. But remind me of that after we turn off. I can tell you. But I think that's the image that we have of our role, and if we have that kind of picture in our minds, and we're living that way, we're caring for our elders and our ancestors, and we're thinking about the future, we live in a blameless way. The world can't. You know what the world does with that is it says, "Wow, there's a better way to do things." That's what the world actually has to accept. Because deep down inside, everybody wants what that picture shows. Now, here's another interesting thing. In Acts chapter 10, we got the point in the story of the book of Acts where we have a transition from, ministering to, the, Jews and the Samaritans and the Hellenists. By the way, the Hellenists were Jews. They were just Greek-speaking Jews. They were kind of assimilated Jews. So that, and then we transition to going out into the rest of the empire. So we have the conversion of Saul, who becomes Paul in 9. And then we're back with Peter, and we see Peter do a couple of things. One of those things is he heals a guy named Aeneas. Now, we skip right over that. We're like, "Oh, there's this dude named Aeneas." And, Peter says to him, "Get up, stand, and walk." Everybody in the empire would know what was going on. What everybody in the empire, this would be like me saying, "I was walking down the street and I saw a dude named George Washington. He was cutting down a cherry tree." And everybody's like, "Oh, what's going on with that?" And I preached to him the gospel and told him he shouldn't cut that tree down. Anyway, but you've got this character. Everybody knows that Aeneas is the father of the Roman people. Everyone knows that Aeneas carried his father out of Troy. This is saying, I believe there really was a guy named Aeneas, but I think it was also, in God's providence, a message saying, Rome is sick, really sick, and only Christ can heal it, because he's the personification. I mean, Peter, Paul, they would have all had those coins with guess who on it? Aeneas, with his father on his back. Now Aeneas can't walk, and now Christ has to heal him. Beautiful, beautiful thing to think about. So we're in a society that's like that. It's sick.
Yeah, so just on the note of kind of word definition changes and kind of hijacking, taking over. So I'm just thinking, I had a friend send me an article of the Anti-Defamation League changing multiple times the definition of racism. And they actually have like an interim version until they can decide what's next.
Right.
But I'm just thinking in light of like my wife and I homeschool, and you had mentioned like your kids have gone to university. I don't know, secular or non, but just kind of in that vein of taking dominion, the bottom up versus the top down kind of approach. And if we have, you know, the people on the top that are making the rules, quote unquote, or
Right.
giving us the information,
Right.
you know, should we kind of be striving to go to and implant ourselves in those places, you know, to kind of, you know, fight against that?
Yeah, I think, let's think about a guy named Francis Collins. You guys familiar with Francis Collins, head of NIH? It's come out here recently that he kind of winked at a number of things that are pretty gross, pretty vile in his sort of oversight of the National Institutes of Health. I'm not speculating. I'm not telling tales. You can go and look for yourself. And the thing that we were all expecting or hoping for is that he be a Daniel, right? Faithful presence. Well, he was present. I don't know how faithful. The evidence seems to say not. So if we aspire to those positions, we might find ourselves in his spot where, you know, he's getting huge pushback, now from all over the place because we thought you were different, kind of thing, you know. So I think we need to be circumspect. We need to be, sometimes we'll find ourselves, like Daniel wasn't looking for a job. You remember the story. He was kind of forced into the situation. And then he just tried to do his best in the job. Joseph wasn't looking for a job. Well, maybe he was a little bit. He was down in the prison, and in the pit. But it was circumstances that God orchestrated that placed these men in those spots. And I think that we need to be willing to be, used in those positions if we find ourselves in them. But sometimes I think we can play a game with ourselves and fool ourselves and think we're doing one thing when we're not. So I do think it's important for us to be faithful wherever we find ourselves in society, and God's grace, we can find ourselves in positions of significant authority, in a society. And when we find ourselves there, we really need God's help to stay faithful, because there are going to be temptations that are bigger than we can imagine.
Yes, so we should probably wrap up here. Any last questions before we close out? One thing that I think struck me about the importance of Bombadil, one was you alluded to his joyfulness,
Mm-hmm.
and having weight, but yet being joyful about it. I think that picture is a great thing to be having, especially in this season of my life as a father, trying to lead my children and not be the domineering,
Mm-hmm.
which I have the tendency to bend. I want you to bend.
Mm-hmm.
I have authority.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've definitely appreciated that element. The other part of it, talking about how we wield power, I think it's just so critical, like in the Francis Collins example you're alluding to. If you are steeped in the authority of God's law, it will bode well with you. But if you just are attempting to appease the masses, you're in danger.
Yeah, and maybe Francis Collins was saying, okay, I want to do he's a believer. I'm going to take him at his word. He says he believes in Christ. I'm guessing maybe he thought, well, maybe I can give in a little bit over here because of some other good things that are happening over here. Maybe he's doing some kind of calculus like that. I don't know. But I can see how that could be, where he thinks, like, I can maybe use my position to get more good people into different spots. Maybe I can use my position to address this problem, and I can just kind of like ignore that one over there, that kind of thing. Those temptations are powerful.
Chris, thank you so much. Chris is, yeah, you betcha. Let's give him a hand. And congratulations to Chris. He's accepted a call. He's down at Westminster PCA Church in Vancouver. And so I don't want you driving down there, going to church now, and leaving here. But,
it's a good church here.
So he's now a Northwesterner, a fellow one here in our state. And it's so good to have you part of the light, if you will, the kingdom of God, and advancing it in your books and in your preaching and in your presence and speaking. So thank you for spending some time with us here in South Tacoma.
I'm glad to be here. This was a lot of fun.
Grateful for that. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you very much for the ministry of C.R. Wiley. We pray, Father, that you would continue to use him not only in Vancouver, but Father, beyond as you have been. We are grateful for the mind and the thought and the reasoning and the writing, and we pray, Father, that would only continue. Father, help us hobbits to be about the business that we are to be about, and to rejoice, keeping it going, living in the Shire with the responsibilities you have given us. Asking, though, Lord, when you do ask us to venture out beyond, maybe that we're uncomfortable to do so, that we would be ready, willing, able as you send us, and to speak truth and to represent you, and to do so in humility, but also without fear, rejoicing and singing as Tom does, Father, in Tolkien. We thank you for the things we've been challenged to think about, probably challenged to be better readers maybe than we are. Father, to use our time wisely. We're only here for a while, on this stage for a while, and those of us who are parenting know that that window closes soon too. Father, ask that we would be mindful of all these things. Help us, Father, to be good stewards of all that you have blessed us with, which is much. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.